Gaige the Necromancer is the first character I grinded all my way to OP8 with and contributed the most playtime I had with a single character in the 7 years I've owned Borderlands 2. The playstyle of Gaige is quite unique and diverse in strategy compared to the other 5 Vault Hunters. Do you hate having to shoot directly towards enemies? Do you like having an ability that essentially is an Axton's turret, but worse? And do you like the mundane tedium of having to pre-stack Anarchy before doing Digistruct Peak runs? Then Gaige is a perfect fit for you. First, let's start off with the skill tree. To the right, we have the most important, and arguably best, tree of Ordered Chaos. I advise early in your run-through to spec into Anarchy, as it can triple the DPS that Gaige can put out as long as you don't reload at only the cost of accuracy and a skill point. Smaller, lighter, faster is also important because with a decreased mag size and a marginally faster reload, you aren't really losing out on much. Also, with smaller, lighter, faster, you can build up loads more Anarchy since you can gain Anarchy from reloading your weapons with a dry magazine. Pre-shrunk Cyberpunk is also a good skill as it boosts the cap of Anarchy to 500. I usually only put 4 skill points into pre-shrunk and save 1 for someplace else. Robot Rampage is good if you want to do a death trap centric build. I tend to avoid this and put it elsewhere. If you plan on optimizing death trap, go for this skill. Blood-soaked shields is an awesome skill for mobbing, but you have to be careful with your health since you can lose up to 5% of your health each time you get a kill to fully recharge your shields. If you rock a grog nozzle and use it a decent amount, it shouldn't be as much of a problem. Annoyed Android is good for death trap centric builds because a faster movement speed for him means more time engaging enemies. Discord is also what I argue is Gaige's second most important skill next to Anarchy. Without this skill, if you tap reload, you instantly lose stacks of Anarchy you acquire. But if you reload with Discord, Anarchy acquired drains slowly with an applied boost to accuracy, fire rate, and a 3% per second health regen. Discord is perfect if you're in a sketchy situation and you need health regen, or during a boss battle, or you accidentally hit R and you don't want to grind all the way back up to 400 stacks of Anarchy. You can just hit reload twice and it cancels out Discord and you can keep your Anarchy stacks. Typecast Iconoclast is great for building Anarchy fast, so you can spend less time repetitively pre-stacking Anarchy, and makes dying on a Digistruct Peak run hurt slightly less inside than it already does. Same goes for Rational Anarchist. If you're doing a campaign run-through or mobbing, it helps keep momentum chugging along. Death from Above, frankly, is what sours this skill tree a little, as the trigger from the skill is a little bugged and can set off unintentionally. The fact it can consume up to 5 stacks per trigger is a kick in the gut. The damage done by the skill is also mediocre at higher levels. The Nth Degree is great for mobbing, especially at higher stacks of Anarchy. With 400 stacks of Anarchy totaling around a 450% damage buff to your weapons, this skill can make it easy to decimate entire rooms of enemies. And the Capstone Melee Override skill I would avoid unless you do Melee Gaige. You monster. The next skill is Little Big Trouble. I don't invest heavily into this skill tree unless I'm rocking a Shock Fiver / Twister or a Norfleet, and I want to do maximum possible elemental DPS. Little Big Trouble is more so of a death trap centered support tree with elemental stat boosts. More Pep is quite a versatile skill, and I usually spec into this for the higher chance of slag during my UVHM run through. There's better and worse things you could definitely put your skill points down on. Myelin is also quite good, as you gain shock resistance, which makes you more effective in dealing with annoying ass ion loaders and super badass surveyors that pop your shields like it's nothing. Shock Storm, from my experience, is a mediocre skill. At higher levels, I haven't really killed an enemy from Shock Storm, and trying to hit crits with Gaige with Anarchy is an uphill battle. With a high enough anarchy, critical hits are void since you're doing so much damage, and essentially critical hits boil down to luck. Do not pick up the stair. It puts a hamper on potential DPS that Death Trap can put out. Go for Strength of 5 Gorillas instead if you're more so interested in doing a Death Trap build. Electrical Burn is alright, but if you're dealing with anything else besides monsters and enemies, the fire damage procs don't do much. It's still useful in places like Lynchwood, and you don't really require a fire weapon anymore. Shock and Ah is meh. The damage done by this is middling earlier in your run through, and I personally do not like the effect obscuring my vision. Evil Enchantress is a very good mobbing skill, as you chain attacks with high stacks of anarchy. Your elemental weapons will do an additional 30% proc damage, combined with whatever anarchy stacks you have. It's not much, but little towards DPS can go a long way. Do not pick up 1-2 Boom, please, for the love of God. The orb doesn't scale well at all, and it nearly halves Death Trap's DPS. Wires Don't Talk is useful for shock procs and DPS. It's a good skill in my book, nothing really much to say about that. Intersperse Outburst is great for slagging, especially new VHM, which is vital. The capstone, Make It Sparkle, isn't very good in my opinion. Of course, there are rare occasions that charging Death Trap with an element can come in handy, but at most times you're better off investing the skill point elsewhere. Next up, the final skill tree I will cover is the BFF or Best Friends Forever tree. This tree can give a combined boost to Gaige and Death Trap. I suggest investing points here early game after putting down on Anarchy due to the tree providing good survivability with Gaige. Close enough is vital if you plan on reaching higher Anarchy. Chances are low of you hitting something, so with the 50% chance of bullets rebounding towards your foe at only half damage, Gaige becomes far more efficient and can lay waste with the damage bonuses that Anarchy still provides. Cooking Up Trouble is good earlier on in your run through, but later it's outpaced by the Grog Nozzle and skills that I covered earlier like Discord. It's quite situational as you'll rarely find yourself with full mags since you want to avoid reloading earlier on in the game. Fancy Mathematics is a lifesaver for shields with abysmal recharge delay, like the B if you're going for fast boss kills. Spec into this. Look Up can be good, but most of the time Death Trap either tries recharging my shields while I'm down, or there's a bug in his AI that makes him recharge the shields of enemies, mistaking them for allies. It would be a much better skill if DT wasn't coded so shoddily. The Better Half is great for DPS, especially if you have a higher mag pistol or a flat off barrel sniper, as you get to maximize the bullets that Gaige can dish out. The skill also goes well in hand with Smaller, Lighter, Faster, which can help build Anarchy faster when mobbing, since reloads occur far more often. Potent as a Pony is alright. At higher levels, once you get down to this tree, you aren't really itching for max health, but it makes Death Trap last longer, so... Upshot Robot is a much better skill, doubling the time that you can have Death Trap deployed if he isn't being decimated by aggro. Even though I don't play a Death Trap centric Gaige, the skill can help draw out aggro from enemies for a longer period. Invest in this. Unstoppable Force isn't necessary, but I like picking it up for the shield regen and noticeably faster movement speed. You can't go wrong with a boost in movement speed. Explosive Clap is alright. For smaller targets, the explosion can stun and let you put a good amount of damage down while the enemy is vulnerable. Made of Sterner Stuff is good for Death Trap damage, but it doesn't do much unless you have a comm to boost the stat. I tend to not really spec into this and put my skill points elsewhere. 20% cooler is a reduction in time it takes to pull out Death Trap by up to 30%. You can't go wrong with picking this skill, as you can draw aggro faster or pull out your whoop-ass machine if you prefer speccing into certain Death Trap skills. Sharing is Caring is the final capstone I will cover. Sharing is Caring is awesome for Death Trap centric builds and can boost the damage and survivability of Death Trap if you have a good Roid shield on, like a Hide of Terra or a Love Thumper if you aren't playing co-op. God bless their souls. Even with the Black Hole shield on, once it's depleted, Death Trap can go ham on enemies. Overall, Gaige's skills are alright. There are a few gemstones that define how Gaige and Deathtrap can put down a ton of damage, but coming from playing Sal where great skills are in abundance, it made figuring out where to put my skill points in a little bit of a learning curve. If you put your skill points in the right places during endgame, you can have a very strong Gaige. Playing Gaige is a very risk/reward based playstyle. The damage potential of Gaige is outstanding, especially with Anarchy and respective boosts, to that putting her at one of my favorite Vault Hunters to mob with, since the way you can play her isn't surefire and consistent every single time. Sure, pre-stacking can get annoying, but it's far less of a snooze fest than running through UVHM with a surefire Grog Nozzle and D plus Salvador in my honest opinion. If you like easy mobbing, or pre-stacking as fast as possible through Gaige, she can shamfleet quite well, but farming for a North Fleet with Gaige, I think would tip me over the edge of insanity. Playing Gaige had me at the edge of my seat, all the while I found new ways to play and adapt her skill set to my playstyle. Unlike Sal, once I got to glorious OP8 with Gaige, I felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment, something I haven't frankly felt in a long time since I coded Snake on my own in JavaScript.